so excited to be here with you guys today. Today, we are going to be talking about how to be successful, effective, and happy in your day-to-day life amidst all of this sensory overload that we have going on all the time. So I think this is a really important topic to cover because I think everybody always has big goals. I have big goals all the time. I have friends that have big goals, but it seems like there's this difficulty in being able to navigate all of the stimulus that's happening all at once. And so for me, I'm naturally such a go-getter. I, by nature, tend to bite off more than I can chew, and sometimes that comes back to bite me. Also, sorry, because my eyes have been really dry today, so I put some eye drops in earlier. So I tend to be a go-getter, and I tend to bite off more than I can chew. And that has come back to bite me so many times because the brain operates in a way that it takes in information and it processes that information, and then it decides to perform an executive function associated with that information. The problem is that oftentimes in life, we can get stuck because there's a sensory overload. And what that means is your brain has so many things that it's trying to take in at once, and it's trying to process all this information. And in doing so, it kind of gets overwhelmed because there's only so many circuits in your brain that can be running at one time. There's only so many communications that can be happening between neurons at once. And so sometimes the brain just gets overwhelmed, and what it will do is it will actually shut down. And so the brain will shut itself down because it doesn't know how to do so many things at once. And that is the problem that we see with people like myself who tend to want to do so many things all the time because you're a go-getter, and that's not a wrong thing. It's not a bad thing. But it can be very discouraging for somebody who wants to do all of these great things, but then they really struggle with being able to actually achieve those goals. So the last couple weeks, I've really been focusing on this in my personal life, and I want to be able to share with you guys what I have learned and the things that have been successful for me, and I want to be able to share those with you. So again, let's just kind of reiterate the problem here. We believe that we can do everything, and your brain is good at convincing you of delusions, right? We can be very delusional, and so we can create a false reality. And so we believe that we can do all these things, but in reality, we just can't. And that's where we fail, right? Is we try and do too much, and that is the reason that we fail. So I kind of want to start out by comparing life now to what it was. So there's a neuroscientist by the name of Daniel Levitin, and I really, really like him because he talks about how the information that we consume now is so much more than the information that we used to consume. And so what I mean by that is it's crazy when you really look at the numbers, because the average American today consumes 5 times the amount of information that they did in 1986, which really just blows my mind. And if you actually took all the information that you're perceiving from every which way on the daily and you put it down on like a 5x8 index card, all of that information would cover all of Massachusetts and all of Connecticut combined, like their square mileage, which that just blows my mind. I can't even begin to comprehend that. And so you shouldn't be expected to comprehend that, but we try to, right? And that's the fault, is we don't even recognize that it's completely impossible to be able to receive all this information and adequately do something with it. So what I want to talk about first and foremost is, no wonder you feel like you can't keep up, because it's quite literally impossible to do that. You can't keep up. And that's, I think, the problem, especially with such a fast-paced moving society that we have in America. We feel this need to always be going and going and going and going. And I'm not saying that, we need to stop and smell the roses, because that's an argument for a different day. What I'm saying is we need to recognize that we physically can't do that. We cannot just go, 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 go. We cannot be fast-paced all the time, because the reason that we're fast-paced is because we're trying to keep up. We're trying to do everything. And so I think the big secret here, and I apologize for all this water leaking out of my eyeballs. And so I think the biggest thing that we need to recognize here is that maybe instead of don't try and keep up, but try and work smarter. And so what I really want to talk about here is that I think a big problem is multitasking, is we think that, if we multitask, we're going to be able to get it done, because again, we're focused on the only way that we're going to be able to do this is if we multitask. Because again, the goal is to be able to do everything and get everything done, right? And so we decide to multitask because essentially and logically, reasonably, that is the only way that we're going to be able to get anything done, is if we multitask. But the science is so clear that we cannot do that. Multitasking is not possible. You can't multitask. And to an extent, obviously, you can somewhat multitask, but it has been proven over and over again by the science and research that your effectiveness at doing all of the things that you're multitasking at is much lower than if you were to do it single-handedly on its own. And so I think that's a big thing to recognize, that your brain has a difficult time compartmentalizing. So even the small day-to-day tasks. So think about this, right? Let's kind of take a step back here. Those day-to-day tasks that you're trying to multitask with, if you can't even do that for one day, what makes you think that you're going to be able to achieve 10 different huge goals in the future? It's honestly, multitasking is the same philosophy as trying to achieve 10 big goals in the future. It's the same idea of trying to do too many things at once. And those goals that you set in the future, those 10 big goals that you have to do things every single day in order to eventually achieve those goals, right? Like that's why you set goals for the future, because you have to do things now to eventually build up to the future of achieving those goals. But if those goals are so big and so vast and diverse that they require you to do so many different things every single day, you're not going to be effective at hitting all 10 goals. You're much better off just setting one goal and doing the small little things every single day that are going to accumulate to you achieving that one goal. You're much better off doing that. But it's hard, right? It's hard to kind of take that step back and be like, shoot, I can't do these 10 things. I have to do this only one thing. And that's a hard thing to do because, again, as a society, we have been conditioned to do everything and keep up all the time. But if you can, and we feel shame and guilt because of that. And I want to kind of emphasize that why is it bad to not do everything? Because we feel ashamed, right? We feel guilt by not keeping up because we see this facade in social media and just the media in general. We see this facade of people doing everything. But let me be real with you guys. Everybody is not doing everything. Okay, and let me give you an example. So I am somebody who sticks to a daily schedule every single day. And I have one of my classmates who I am now studying with. She and I were acquaintances, we were friends, but we were not super close or anything like that. We didn't really study together. We would go see each other at events because we were in the same friend group on the weekends and whatnot. But I would post pictures on social media, like my Instagram stories about like fitness and workouts and different educational topics about fitness. I would go on and do stories and whatnot. And so it was ironic because she and I actually ended up kind of reconnecting at the start of this year because I'm now starting my second year of med school. I've been in it since the end of July. And we were talking and she and I were kind of discussing exams and how we both were struggling with school. I am not the person that's at the top of my class. I'm going to kind of be real with you guys and honest about that right now. I have always struggled with school just by nature. So I want to kind of emphasize that I've always been like a really hard worker, but I've never been somebody that could just listen to the lecture, go home, study for 5 minutes before the test and ace it. Like there are some people out there that are like that and, bless you because that's amazing, but I'm not one of those people. I have to study so hard in order to do even decent. Even if I study a lot, I never have like the top grade. But anyway, my point in saying this is that she and I kind of connected and we were talking about our exam scores and being real with each other. And she was like, wow, I had no idea that you struggled with exams. Like I had no idea that you struggled with school at all. And I was like, well, yeah, I do. And she was like, well, I didn't know, because I see on social media, you're doing everything. I feel like you're doing so much and it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. And it made me kind of sad because I was like, I never want anybody to feel that way. But at the same time, it made me realize that without even knowing it, I was putting out a facade that I was doing everything. But that wasn't the case. And that isn't the case for most people. So I want you guys to remember that most people are not doing everything. So there's no reason for you to feel shame or guilt for not doing everything. And so when you can kind of logically that actually are slowing down, but you realize that those will actually end up making you more successful, then you don't have to feel guilty about that. You can feel smart and be like, well, it's about working smarter, right? Not necessarily working harder and trying to sprint and keep up with all of these people that aren't even keeping up themselves. Okay, so I kind of want to start by talking about 2 things that you can do to counter the everyday problems that you see. Okay, so we're going to kind of dive into 2 different things here. So one, we're going to talk about how you can be happier on the daily. And we're going to talk about how you can be more successful on the daily amidst all of this sensory overload. Okay, so first and foremost, take breaks and take a nap. And now I know that you've heard this before, but hear me out. There's a reason for this. Okay, I always want to back up what I'm saying with some science so that you guys can really kind of understand where I'm coming from here, and why I back up what I say. So here's the thing. Break up your work. And this is why taking breaks is so effective. So your brain kind of has two modes that it likes to operate in. Okay, and so your brain works on task positive and task negative networking. So task positive networking is when your brain is focused on a task, kind of like it sounds, right? This is generalized terms, but this is when you're focused on a task. So you're working on a spreadsheet, you're doing your job, I'm studying, you're doing whatever it is that you're doing that is for your work, and you're concentrating, you're focused. Well, after a certain amount of time, your brain gets depleted of glucose. And your brain, the neurons in your brain, they run on glucose. Every decision that you make, whether it's big or small, it requires glucose. It needs energy. That's also why oftentimes when you're studying or doing work for long hours, you crave a lot of snacks or sugary foods, because your brain actually, believe it or not, when you're doing long tasks or anything that requires decent brain stimulation, your brain will consume 70% of the glucose that you are consuming at that time. Now, I'm not saying go eat a life-size bag of Sour Patch Kids by any means, but don't really feel that guilty about having a little sugary snack. It's going to keep you more awake and alert versus eating a big meal. I personally tend to avoid big meals when I'm studying because it will just make me tired. The reason that it makes you tired is because all of the blood goes to your digestive system to help digest it, which takes away blood, nutrients, oxygen, and glucose from your brain, being able to use it for your task. So kind of some of the reasoning there. But again, the task positive network is when you're kind of doing something that requires your full attention and focus. Then let's say you take a break, right? You've been doing this for 2 hours. You're going to take a 15-20 minute break. When you go on that break, your brain switches to task negative networking. What is task negative networking? Well, it's when your brain is in what we call more of that creative state. There's no direct task that needs to be modulated by a certain pathway in the brain to be accomplished. It's kind of just that floating space where you're allowed to rest. It's your brain's ability to restore its glucose that it's been using nonstop for the last 2 hours. And that is what we call typically the creative state. And so this is kind of that time when, let's just say earlier in the morning, you were trying to find the answer to something and you were studying so hard, focusing so hard on it. And then later in the day, you go to the grocery store, you're looking at the cereal on the aisle, and it just comes to you, right? When it's like, it just happens to click right in your brain. And so sometimes these connections that you make that are your creative connections, they happen when you're on the break, and those can actually be beneficial for when you are focused. But if you never take the time to take a break, your brain gets exhausted, you deplete your glucose stores, and you prevent your brain's ability from using a whole nother aspect of it that can be beneficial to your work in its creative mode when you're on a break. So it is not bad to take a break. I know that we don't want to take breaks because we feel like we're falling behind. But again, remember we talked about this. You're not actually falling behind. You think you are, but it's just that facade. So take those breaks. In addition, taking a nap. That is also a huge one. Now, I'm not saying go take a 2-hour nap because you don't want to slip into like your REM sleep or your deep sleep, because oftentimes you'll wake up in the middle of those stages and you'll be more groggy. So anything like a 15-20 minute nap or anything like a 15-20 minute meditation can be super, super beneficial. I personally have been taking more breaks and I've been taking more naps or meditating when I'm studying, and it has made such a world of difference. And it's crazy because you don't really think that you're going to be as effective, but when you're well rested, you are going to be more effective. And the science shows this, that when people take those short naps, even Google some of the most productive, well-off, successful, profitable companies have places for their employees to take naps. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a nap. It can be exercising for 20 minutes. It can be going for a walk in the sun for 20 minutes. Whenever you expose your brain to stimuli like that, you're releasing different neurotransmitters in your brain. You're releasing dopamine, you're releasing serotonin, especially sunlight. Sunlight with cold plunges has been proven to be as effective as an antidepressant. It can be difficult sitting in a room on your laptop all day. I tried to work through that 20-minute break. And then furthermore, even going on for another couple hours, you're going to be way less productive and way less successful. So again, kind of realize those things. These are the two things that you can do to counter the day-to-day success or lack thereof. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is how to be happier on your day-to-day. So I think that when you're happier, you are more successful. And I think when you're more successful, you're happier, right? But I think sometimes we glorify people who are super successful, but a lot of times they're not really happy. You see that all the time with celebrities and people who have built amazing businesses, but they're not necessarily happy. And this is actually a personal experiment that I've been running on myself for about the last 2 weeks. So every morning I take my dog on a walk. And I've always done this since I got him a year ago. I got him when I moved here. And I would always listen to music. So for probably the first 8 months of living here, when I'd take my dog on a walk in the morning, I would listen to music. Like nothing specific, just whatever was on my playlist. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to start listening to a podcast because I want to be educated, right? I want to be listening to educational material. I don't want to waste my time because, again, every day there is so much to be done. And if I have time to be educated, I want to educate myself. And so I started doing that. I was listening to podcasts, and don't get me wrong, I was enjoying the podcasts. I was loving them. But it was kind of just automatic stimulation, sensory overload from the get-go as soon as I woke up in the morning. I really hadn't even taken the chance to wake up. It was roll out of bed, put my shoes on, and I automatically walk my dog or else he gets really annoyed with me. And I thought that I was doing something great, especially because I was getting that sunlight, and kind of like I just mentioned, sunlight is so fantastic for your brain to wake you up, and it really helps with your circadian rhythm as well. But what I started to notice was I would get back from my walks and I would feel educated, but I would still feel stressed. I would still feel like, oh my gosh, now there's still so much for me to do. And a couple weeks ago, I decided to switch that up. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? Instead, I am going to not even take my phone on the walk, because I started to identify my phone as the source of my sensory overload. And so what I did was I just stopped even taking my phone on the walk. I get up, I don't even look at my phone. I put my shoes on and I take my dog on the walk. And at first, I just walked in silence for probably the first 2 days. And I just kind of looked around and I observed in silence. And it was beautiful. And without even realizing, I started to just think to myself, this is such a beautiful place that I live. These trees are so beautiful. I'm so thankful that I live somewhere like this. And kind of without realizing it and just kind of by default, I started to verbalize out loud things that I was grateful for. I just had a natural inclination to do it. It wasn't anything that I added to my daily schedule. It was just, I just felt like it. And so I started to verbalize my gratitude. 3 to 5 things on my walk. And I've been doing that every morning now for about 2 weeks. And I can't even begin to describe to you guys how much of an impact that has had on me. Because, they talk about in a lot of ancient historical and even religious cultures that the absence of desire, right? Buddhism, the absence of desire is happiness and a state of peace. And we talk about happiness as a choice, but I think that I've learned throughout time that gratitude, being in a state of gratitude, is what engenders you to be in a state of happiness, because you're absent of desire. And so every day these past 2 weeks, I've been verbalizing out loud what I'm grateful for. And it has made me realize how lucky I am, but at the same time, it puts a lot of things into perspective. Because it's so many different things that I'm grateful for that I would have just naturally taken for granted, right? I'm so grateful that I live in a place that has beautiful green trees. I'm so thankful that I live right next to a mountain that I can go hike and it's only a 5-minute drive. I'm so thankful for such beautiful weather. I'm so thankful for a body that allows me to walk every single day. I'm so thankful that I have a dog that I get to spend time with, and he gets me out of bed and gets me to go outside and go on a walk so that I don't have to think about it. I'm thankful that I am enrolled in a wonderful institution where I get to learn about medicine. And just naturally, I started to just realize that I had been taking so many things for granted, and I've been verbalizing this gratitude, and it's made me feel like the other tasks that I have throughout the day are not as daunting. All of the other things that I have to get done, they're kind of put into perspective, where before it was just, oh my gosh, I have all these things that I have to get done. I don't know how I'm going to do it. There's this sensory overload and I just kind of want to shut down. There's no way I'm going to be able to get everything done. Instead, it's just, I'm starting with this intense feeling of peace. as I realize how grateful I am to be able to do all of those things. And for some reason, that peace that I develop from this expression of gratitude is a sense of happiness. And I realize that, you know what? I'm not in a state of stress. I'm happy. I'm at peace. If not every single thing gets done on my checklist today, that's okay. We can do it tomorrow. And it makes me more clear-headed. I'm able to structure my day. I'm able to restructure my day if something needs to be moved around. It's not the end of the world. But it allows me to get out of this state of high stress. When you're stressed, you have really high levels of cortisol. And sometimes that causes you to act as if you're in a fight or flight situation. And sometimes that makes you not make decisions that are maybe the best or most conducive to your happiness or well-being. And so those are kind of some things that I wanted to reiterate to you guys that I feel like have really impacted my ability to be more successful every single day, but also just be more happy every single day. So again, let's kind of circle back to what we kind of started talking about is this sensory overload. There's so much information. There's so much that you need to get done. And there's so much comparison that we have to other people as we try and mitigate all of these things. So remember, take a break and take a nap. It's okay. You're going to be more successful in the long run if you do that. And every single day, if you can, get outside, verbalize your gratitude, express the things that you're grateful for, and that's going to help you be in a more state of calm, peace, and you're going to be happier because of that. And in return, that's going to shift your perspective on all of the things you need to get done, and it's going to help you realize that they're really not that bad, and that it's a blessing to be able to do those things instead of a chore. The last thing I want to end with you guys is make sure that you are writing things down. Whether you're writing your goals down, whether you're writing down your daily schedule, there's a process called encoding in your brain. Encoding is your brain's ability to take information, process it through your limbic system, which is your amygdala and your hippocampus, and store it in your long-term memory. If you can have information go through your amygdala and hippocampus and then store it in your long-term memory, you're going to be much better off because you're going to remember those goals much better. It's encoded in your brain much stronger and much deeper in that long-term memory. So that's what the process of encoding is. And not everything gets encoded. So if you read something on a wall and you never look at it again, it's probably not going to be encoded. But if you're writing something down that you have to do that day, or you're writing down a future goal, what that does is it encodes that information because you're consistently going to be looking at it. And if you consistently verbalize it, you have different senses. You have speech, you have vision, and you have tactile writing. Of all of these things are going to further ingrain those goals into your brain. And it has been shown that people that write their goals down and verbalize them are 1.4 to 2 times more likely to achieve their goals. So again, making sure that you have that structure is simultaneously just as important as all those other things that I talked about. And again, I want to reiterate that writing those things down is great for your future goals, as well as writing down your goals for the day on your agenda. And just like how I talked about taking breaks and taking a nap is good for your daily goals, that things that you need to get done. Verbalizing that gratitude and expression is good for your daily goals as well. And it's also great for your future goals. But that writing down is so important, you guys. I have done it myself. I have had clients do it, and it makes such a big difference. And I just cannot emphasize that enough. So I hope today that you guys were able to take something away from this. I know that it's hard. In this day and age, America itself is just so fast-paced, and there is so much going on, and there are so many icons that we look up to that we think are doing it all, but they are not. Remember that everybody is human, everybody has their struggles, and we're all just trying our best. But don't run yourself into the ground trying to do that. There are better, easier, smarter ways for you to get your tasks throughout the day accomplished, and there's a way for you to be happy while doing it. I encourage you guys to do these things, and if you do them and you notice a difference, please reach out to me via DMs. It's at Stand Firm with Eden. I consider you guys my friends, my family. These are things that I am learning how to do for myself, and it's making such a big impact in my life. I want to share this with you. That's why I'm sitting here. I want to share with you those same things so that you can implement them into your life so that they can help you guys. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you guys have any questions, again, please please feel free to reach out to us on our main @StandFirm page, or again, @StandFirmWithEden if you want to DM me. Let me know your progress. Ask any more questions. But in the meantime, slow down. Remember that you are capable, and never forget to be grateful. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you on the next episode.